He spent 10 years building the case. 10 years of surveillance, dead ends, sleepless nights, and close calls that left her colleagues traumatized and her marriage in ruins. 10 years chasing a ghost. A Korean billionaire who moved billions in cocaine and meth across America without ever leaving a single fingerprint. The FBI threw everything at him. RICO cases. Undercover units. Wiretaps. Informants. Special task forces built from the ground up just to catch one man. And he walked away from every single one. But tonight, Agent Camil Jackson was done playing it safe. Tonight she was going in. A SWAT team breaching a metal door. Red and blue lights blinding through smoke. Camil at the front. Gun raised, jaw set, eyes like she's been waiting for this exact moment for a decade. And she had been. She just didn't know the man she was hunting had been waiting for her too. Before we get into what happened that night in the Nevada desert, before the ambush, before the capture, before everything that came after, you need to understand two things. You need to understand Camil Jackson. And you need to understand Seok Yi. Because this is not a simple story about a cop and a criminal. This is a story about two people who spent a decade studying each other from opposite sides of the law, until the wall between them finally came down. Camil Jackson joined the FBI at 23. By 25, she had been assigned to the most complex organized crime case the Bureau had seen in 2 decades. Her supervisor called it a career maker. Her mother called it a death sentence. They were both right. Seok Yi was 31 when Camil first saw his photograph. Born in Busan, South Korea. Immigrated to Los Angeles at age 16. No criminal record in the United States. Not one. On paper he was a legitimate businessman. Real estate, tech investments, a clean trail of LLCs with nothing to trace. Of paper, he ran the most sophisticated drug distribution network the American Southwest had ever seen. Cocaine sourced from South America. Methamphetamine cooked in facilities so clean and hidden they looked like pharmaceutical labs. Cannabis and MDMA filling in the margins. All of it moving through ghost channels that left law enforcement chasing shadows. By the time Camil came onto the case, Seok Yi had already burned 3 FBI operations to the ground. And he hadn't even bothered to watch them fall. There is a moment, every law enforcement officer knows it, when you realize you are not chasing a criminal. You are chasing a system. Seok Yi was not the product. He was not the money. He was not even the organization. He was the idea behind the organization. And ideas do not leave fingerprints. By the early 2010s his network stretched from Las Vegas to Houston. Product moved in refrigerated freight trucks, inside commercial seafood shipments, through car dealerships and laundromats that processed the money so efficiently even the accountants couldn't tell the difference. His lieutenants were clean. Many of them didn't even know who they ultimately worked for. There were 4, 5, sometimes 6 degrees of separation between a street-level dealer in Phoenix and the man at the top of the chain. Seok Yi lived in a penthouse in downtown Las Vegas. Visible, elegant, untouchable. He attended charity galas. He donated to children's hospitals. He was photographed at NBA games, shaking hands with city councilmen. And from her surveillance van 3 blocks away, Camil watched all of it through a telephoto lens. "He knows we're here," her partner said one night, watching Seok Yi step out of a black SUV, pause on the curb and look, just for a half second, directly at the lens. "He's always known," Camil said. "He just doesn't care." That was the first thing that made her furious about him. It would not be the last. The case file that sat on Camil's desk had grown from one folder to an entire filing cabinet to a dedicated server room at the Las Vegas field office. 3,000 pages of evidence that added up, legally, to almost nothing. She had built RICO cases that prosecutors declined to pursue. Too many moving parts, too few direct links. She had run 2 undercover operations that Seok Yi's counterintelligence burned within weeks. She had flipped informants who turned up dead, or who recanted and disappeared into witness protection. Every year she stayed. Every year someone in the Bureau suggested she rotate off, that the obsession was becoming a liability. And every year she submitted her reassignment refusal in writing. The personal cost was real. Her fiancé left after the 2nd year. "I'm not losing you to a Korean drug lord," he said. She didn't have an answer for him. Her mother stopped asking about her job and started asking whether she was eating. Her friends from the academy moved on, got married, made rank, had children. Camil had a corkboard and a target. She kept the photograph of him at the crime scene, The one where he stood at the edge of a warehouse fire that had incinerated 6 months of her work, just watching the building burn. She had cropped it down to just his face. Those calm dark eyes. That almost imperceptible smile. Like he knew she was watching. Like he was watching her back. The tip came in at 11:47 on a Tuesday night. A source deep inside Seok Yi's Nevada operation. Someone Camil had cultivated for almost a year. Sent coordinates and a window. 48 hours before the facility would be cleared and moved. She pushed for immediate authorization. Her supervisor pushed back. The intelligence was thin, the timeline was aggressive, and going in without full preparation had burned them before. If we wait for perfect, Camil told him, we wait forever. This is what we have. Let me use it. He signed off. She had 12 hours to assemble and brief her team. The facility was a converted industrial plant 40 miles outside of Las Vegas. Satellite imagery showed heavy equipment, unusual electrical draws, and a private security rotation that screamed production site. Camil went over the entry plan 3 times with her team. Every angle covered. Every exit sealed. It was clean. Too clean. The first 5 minutes of the breach went perfectly. They found the product, they found personnel, they found ledgers. Camil let herself feel it. The edge of victory 10 years in the making finally within reach. Then the lights went out. Every exit sealed from the outside. And from the shadows came Seok Yi's men. Not panicked runners, not cornered dealers, but trained operatives who had been waiting in position since before Camil's team arrived. The ambush was surgical. Her team was overwhelmed in under 4 minutes. No one died, a deliberate choice she realized later. They were disarmed, zip-tied, and separated. Except Camil. She was the only one taken separately. And as a hood came down over her head, she heard, through the ringing in her ears and the sound of her own heart, a voice say in perfectly calm English, "Tell her not to be afraid. She's exactly where she needs to be." She expected a cell. He got a room with a window. Clean white walls, natural light filtering through frosted glass, a bed with actual sheets. A bathroom with a lock on the inside, which meant nothing she knew, but the gesture registered somewhere she didn't want to examine too closely. She had been trained for this. Resistance to interrogation, situational awareness, patience. She ran through her protocols and assessed. She was unharmed, her captors had been nonviolent, and no one had asked her a single question. That more than anything unsettled her. When the door opened, she was ready for a lieutenant. An enforcer. Someone she could read through the lens of every criminal psychology profile she'd ever studied. She was not ready for Seok Yi. He was taller than she'd estimated from surveillance photos. He wore a simple black shirt, no jewelry, no display of wealth. He moved the way people move when they're never afraid of entering a room. Unhurried, complete. He set a tray on the table, actual food, not rations, and sat across from her like they were colleagues meeting for lunch. "You haven't eaten since yesterday," he said. "I'm not hungry." "You're furious," he corrected. "Which is different." He looked at her steadily. "I know everything about you, Agent Jackson. I've known it for years. I know you haven't taken a real vacation since 2018. I know you run 5 miles every morning. I know your father was a police officer who died in the line of duty when you were 11, and that's why you can't let this go." The room was very quiet. "You're not a prisoner," he continued. "You're a guest. For now, that's the only distinction that matters. What do you want from me?" He paused. And the answer when it came was not anything she had expected. "I want to know," Seok Yi said, "why someone as brilliant as you spent a decade of her life on me instead of everything else she could have become." Camil said nothing. She ate. And she hated how much she needed to hear the rest of what he had to say. She had built his profile from the outside. Now she was living inside it. The compound, she never learned its exact location, was unlike anything she had imagined. Not a fortress. Not a bunker. It functioned more like a small, tightly run community. 40, maybe 50 people moving through it with purpose and quiet efficiency. Clean facilities. People who looked unmistakably like they chose to be there. She was not confined to her room. That alone was its own kind of psychological complexity. Freedom granted by the man who had taken it from her. She moved through common areas, watched operations she couldn't report on, filed everything into her memory with the discipline of a decade's training. And she watched Seok Yi. The way he worked was nothing like the profiles she'd written. He didn't intimidate. He didn't delegate through fear. He had long conversations with his people, real ones. He remembered names, family situations, problems. He resolved disputes with a quietness that she had only ever seen in exceptional leaders, not criminals. He built something, she wrote in a mental file she would never submit. Whatever else it is, he built something that works. That observation cost her more sleep than anything else so far. They ate together on the 7th night. It wasn't a deliberate choice on her part. There was simply nowhere else to go, and he said nothing that indicated he noticed either way. It was somewhere in the 2nd hour that he told her about Busan. His father had been a factory worker. His mother cleaned offices. They were not poor by Korean standards, but they were not safe. Not from the spiral that took so many in their neighborhood when American pharmaceutical companies began flooding the Korean market through black market channels in the late 90s. His father got hurt at the factory. He was given painkillers. He didn't stop. By the time Seok Yi was 14, his family had lost everything. Not to violence. To a legal product, legally moved, through a distribution chain that no one was ever prosecuted for. I came to America, he said, because I wanted to understand how a system could destroy a man and call it medicine. He looked at her. I spent years learning that system. And then I decided, if the system was going to run either way, it was going to run through someone who knew exactly what it cost. Camil was quiet for a long time. That doesn't justify what you do. No, he agreed. It doesn't. I'm not asking you to justify it. I'm asking you to understand the difference between a man and a monster. You've been chasing a monster for 10 years. He looked at her across the table. Do I look like a monster to you? She didn't answer. But the silence had a shape to it that neither of them could ignore. She had been in the compound for 18 days when she stopped counting them as captivity and started counting them as something she didn't have a word for. They argued. About law, about justice, about whether institutions could ever be trusted to police themselves. She gave him the FBI's position with the sharpness of someone who'd spent a career defending it. He dismantled her arguments with the precision of someone who had spent a career surviving them. They were evenly matched. And she hadn't felt evenly matched with anyone in longer than she could remember. The night she finally asked him, "Why me? Of all the agents on your case, why keep me specifically?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that she would replay for the rest of her life. Because you're the only one who ever came close to understanding me. Not catching me. Understanding me. And I've been waiting a long time to talk to someone who could. She stood at the window after he left, watching the desert dark, and realized something terrifying. She hadn't thought about escape in 3 days. The compound's perimeter sensors went active at 0300. Seok Yi was at her door 4 minutes later. She had been awake. They've triangulated your last comm signal. They'll have a search radius by morning and a strike team by evening. He said it with the same calm that had first infuriated her. I'm giving you a choice. I know what you're going to say. No, he said. You don't. He placed a satellite phone on the table, unlocked, fully charged. You can call them right now. I'll give you coordinates. Your team arrives by dawn. I don't interfere. Everyone walks out. The case gets complicated. You were a captive. Nothing you saw here is clean evidence, but you're free. She stared at the phone. Or you tell me what you actually want. Not what your badge tells you. Not what a decade of conditioning tells you. You. Outside, in the distance, a helicopter's light swept across the ridge. She could see it through the window, the cold white beam of the bureau sweeping the dark like a lighthouse. She had spent 10 years running toward that light. She picked up the phone. And she stood very, very still. She made the call. But what she said to the voice on the other end was not the coordinates of the compound. It was a request. Unusual, professionally unprecedented. The kind that would be reviewed and questioned and examined for years afterward. She asked for time. 48 hours. A procedural hold she cited on grounds only someone with her record and rank could invoke. The voice on the other end hesitated. Then agreed. She set the phone down and looked at Seok Yi across the room. He had not moved. He had not tried to hear the call, had not pressured her, had not shown anything in his face except a quiet, unreadable attention. 48 hours, she said. Then I tell you what I decide. He nodded once. Those 48 hours changed everything and nothing. She did not stop being an FBI agent. He did not stop being who he was. The empire didn't dissolve. The case files didn't disappear. The 10 years didn't undo themselves. But something had shifted in the architecture of the world, and both of them could feel it. When the time ran out, she walked out of the compound alone. She told her supervisors she had been held in a series of rotating locations and had no actionable intelligence on the primary facility. It was the first lie she had ever told in a field report. It would not be the last choice she made that she couldn't explain to anyone who hadn't stood in that room. The case against Seok Yi continued. He vanished as he always had. And somewhere in the machinery of the FBI's most expensive open investigation, a single agent began quietly, methodically, working to make sure the next raid went differently. Not to catch him. To find him. Cut back to the warehouse. The smoke. The gunshot. The silence. Now you understand it. She didn't go to that warehouse to end the chase. She went because she needed to look him in the eye one more time, in the one place where neither of them could pretend the world was anything other than what it was. This story hit different. If you felt that tension, that pull, that impossible choice she had to make, then you already know why this channel exists. We don't do surface level. We go deep. Every story we tell here is designed to keep you locked in from the first second to the last word. Because you deserve stories that respect your intelligence and your time. Hit that subscribe button right now, because the next chapter of Camil and Seok Yi is coming, and you do not want to miss what happens when she finds him again. Drop a comment below. Was she right to make that call? Or did she just make the biggest mistake of her career? And share this video, because someone in your circle needs to see this story. You know exactly who.